So welcome everyone to our session entitled Making the Shift to Agroecological Nutrition in Africa. My name is John Wilson and I will be moderating. I'm speaking to you from my home on the outskirts of Harare in Zimbabwe. To speak to us on this topic are three guests, Professor Cecilia Onyango, Dr. Peter Makaya, both Kenyans, and Peter Gubbles from the north of Ghana. The four of us were the writers of a mini barefoot guide called Surviving COVID-19, the Neglected Remedy. This came out in September last year and is freely downloadable on the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, AFSA website, and on the Barefoot Guide website. We'd urge you to download and share this with anyone you think might be interested, or at least share the link, as we believe this mini barefoot guide explains what agroecological nutrition is from our African perspective. So we're going to focus this session telling you about the barefoot guide. This seems particularly relevant given a lockdown situation in the UK due to COVID and not nearly enough attention being given to nutrition as a way to deal with the COVID crisis. We're also sitting in a full lockdown here in Zimbabwe. I'm not sure what the situation on the rest of the continent is. Before we get on to the discussion, let me introduce the three others in the order that they will speak. Peter Gubbles is originally Canadian, but my suspicion is that he's more Ghanaian than Canadian by now, having lived there for many, many years, over 30 years. He lives with his Ghanaian wife in a village in the north of Ghana and works with Groundswell International, which he co-founded, all over West Africa. Being fluent in French allows him to do this. One of the main focuses of his work is nutrition and its link to agroecology. He has vast experience working with rural communities and civil society across West Africa. Peter Makaya is a physician who is passionate about good health, real health. He's a public health physician with over 30 years experience in the practice of health development, with a career spanning clinical practice, development and management of integrated health programs, health research, and related policy imperatives. He's a policy advocate for agroecological food production and related nutritional approaches to achieve food and nutrition security. He's also the founding director of Organic Consumers Alliance. Cecilia Onyango is an associate professor of horticulture at the University of Nairobi in Kenya. She has over 18 years experience in training, research, and community outreach in the areas of crop production systems, post-harvest handling of produce, standards, and food safety. The focus of her research work has been on African traditional crops, the production, physiology, conservation, and use. And she's done some interesting research on that recently around how the different way in which we produce African traditional crops, for example, affects their nutrition. So I think let's get stuck in. So first to you, Peter Gubbles. Could you share with the audience a little bit about why we came to do a barefoot guide on nutrition? Why did we feel there's a need for a barefoot guide on nutrition?
Well, thank you, John. I will answer that question speaking from my personal experience. For over 30 years, I've been working here in West Africa to promote sustainable agriculture or agroecological agriculture. And I always saw my job as helping small-scale farmers produce food and crops in a sustainable way, in an agroecological way, that is, with reducing the dependence on external inputs, to some extent organic. And I did not concern myself so much about nutrition. And I just had the assumption, and this is common within, I think, also the organic and the agroecological movement, that if I could help farmers produce more food, increase their yields, and increase their incomes, that almost automatically nutrition would be improved. And that is wrong. That's what I found out. It took me a long time, but it's wrong. What are some of the problems? And it's these problems that led me to work with this team to develop a Barefoot guide on agroecological nutrition. First is that in many countries, even if we succeeded in increasing, helping farmers make the transition to agroecological production and increasing their yields, that we saw a persistence of high levels of chronic malnutrition. And this is not just in the countries where I work. I work in a regional, 4 different countries, but all across sub-Saharan Africa, the situation is the same. Now, when I say chronic malnutrition, we'd have to distinguish that from acute. This is the sort of the long-term level of malnutrition that occurs right from childbirth to 2 years or 5 years of age. And chronic malnutrition leads to both physical impairment, that's irreversible, usually is called stunting, and also to cognitive impairment. So the mental capacity, ability to learn, the ability to make income is all affected by chronic malnutrition. Now, globally, the level of stunting has decreased over the last 20 years, but in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, it is reducing very slowly. And in Eastern and Southern Africa, it is actually rising. Now, the figures here, West Africa, we have about 30% stunting. In East and Southern Africa, the level is 35%. And that is the average. In different parts of these countries, it can go up as high as 45%. Now, I'm sorry, all the work I do to help farmers produce agroecologically sound and healthy food, if the level of malnutrition, chronic malnutrition, remains at 35%, that means 35% on average of all children are mentally and physically impaired irreversibly. I think we're doing something wrong. Another problem that I noticed, and this is affecting me, especially in Burkina Faso, where I lived for 10 years, is anemia. Now, the level of anemia in Kenya is 52%. It's 58% in the rest of East Africa. But here in Burkina Faso, next door to me where I am in Ghana, it is 91%. 91% of all children under 5 are anemic. And anemia also is iron deficiency. It also leads to cognitive disability, and it also leads to high levels of maternal mortality. Then leaving the village. So basically, where we are working with farmers, even though we are succeeding in helping them grow agroecologically, it's not really having an impact on basic sound nutrition. And I'm not even talking about obesity and so on that's related to use of processed foods in cities. So I learned that there is a lack of linkage between the production side of farming, which produces nutritious food, and the nutrition side, where citizens eat a healthy, nutritious, and diverse diet, which we can call the food system. And I think it is a scandal, and I think it's tragic because it doesn't have to be that way, that we have almost 1/3 of all children in sub-Saharan Africa being chronically malnourished. So the reason I was interested in joining this team, was to figure out how to better harness agriculture for improved nutritional outcomes. Let me repeat that. How to harness agriculture for improved nutritional outcomes. Not just growing the food and forgetting about nutrition is sufficient. That just doesn't work. We have to help farmers to the way they farm is also linked to how to sustain a sustainable diet. And so we have to help government and the technical officers and agriculturalists, but the farmers themselves and their families realize that farming is not just about increasing income, it's not just about increasing yields, it's not even just about sustainable use of natural resources, and it's not just resilient agriculture that can deal with climate change. It also has to be, well, one term for it is nutrition sensitive. So how to improve local diets is part of the food system. So this is something that I think is lacking. There's a lack of information. When I worked with our partners across 4 countries to find out to what extent they knew about nutrition, many of the field workers and even the leaders of the NGOs where we work and government, when I did health workshops, had a basic lack of information about what constitutes a healthy diet, a diverse diet. I mean, I would ask for one example. I would say, if you had all the food you could eat, let's say of corn or rice or whatever, would malnutrition go away? And about half the respondents said yes, you wouldn't be malnourished if you had enough food. So somehow, from our rich traditional diets, which used to be in the time of our grandmothers, sufficient for a good health and nutrition, somehow our food system and our farming system, even if it's agroecologically produced, is not preventing or reducing these levels, these alarming levels, these scandalous levels of chronic malnutrition and micronutrient deficiency. And why is that? And I think this book, this Barefoot Guide on nutrition and make agroecology more nutrition sensitive is what we hope to write. And in this particular case, we wrote a first version, which is dealing with the COVID. And one of the things I'd like to mention in the time I have left is that this is something that took a long time for me to learn, is that healthy soils are required to have healthy foods. If you don't have healthy soil, you will find that the nutrients that come up from the plants that are growing in that soil are not sufficient or they don't have the adequate amount of minerals. And there have been studies in the US done to show that even in organic agriculture, the level of minerals, especially the micronutrient, the iron, magnesium, calcium, and other important micronutrients that help maintain good nutrition, is I think I saw 40% less than it used to be in the 1950s. And we are heading down that same path here in Africa. And so I'm really passionate and concerned about preventing that. My wife is from Ghana, and I see all my nieces and nephews running around, and I wonder what's their future. And so I'm working with my colleagues, Peter and Cecilia, to write this guide, which I think is the missing link between the nutritionists on the one side and the agroecology people on the other side, and how to link those two together. So, John, I think that's my my message, and I hope I've responded to your question about why we think the Barefoot Guide on Nutrition is important.
Great, thanks, Peter. No, you certainly have, bringing in all those years and years of experience on the ground. So thanks for that. Peter Mukaya is with us now. He's been having a problem with connection. So there you go. Fantastic. Nice to see you, Peter. So we've done all the introductions and all that kind of stuff. So Peter Gubbles has just been answering why we wanted to do a Barefoot Guide. Could you tell the audience why the Barefoot Guide with a focus on COVID in particular? Why did we? Because we started out to do a more general Barefoot Guide, and in fact, to inform the others, we will be working on a fuller Barefoot Guide this year, and it started now. But we decided last year to do a mini Barefoot Guide and to focus it on COVID. Why did we do that, Peter M?
Thank you, John. I don't know whether you can hear me. Can you hear me, John?
I can hear you very well indeed.
Yes, greetings from Kampala, Uganda. I must first of all apologize for a little mishap. There's a bit of challenges. In fact, it's a miracle that I'm able to connect, but Yeah, here we are. I want to send my love and warm greetings from Kampala, Uganda. I'm sure the audience knows that tomorrow is a big day, and this is the eve of the elections for Uganda. So there's a bit of that background that I thought I should share. But it's a beautiful country, John. It's absolutely amazingly beautiful country. It's the home of organic, the pearl of Africa, and I feel privileged to be able to share with the audience from this corner of the world. Yeah. So having said that, I just want to add one or two things. I don't know what has been said with my colleagues. Cecilia, I'm not sure that Cecilia has spoken, but I've heard what Peter G, my colleague from Ghana, shared, and of course, you, John, to the audience. The reason why we did the Barefoot Guide is pretty much what partly Peter G has explained. But again, from my perspective as a physician, as a public health physician, now in practice for about 4 decades, we actually didn't start off developing an agroecology barefoot guide to mitigate COVID-19. We started off to do a nutritional guide on non-conventional agroecological nutrition, and then COVID happened. So the first thing I must say, quite frankly, is that we responded to the obtaining external circumstances of the unfolding of COVID and said, wait a minute, look at the guidelines of how to mitigate or prevent COVID-19 that were presented by WHO. They started with wearing a mask, keeping social distance, and washing hands with antiseptics and so on. And I said to myself, wait a minute, something is not right here. So I convinced my colleagues that perhaps we should remind WHO and the world leadership that there is a need to include a component of nutrition, and not just nutrition, but nutrition that is safe, that is healthy, and of course, which means it's agroecological. So that, in my view, was the genesis. I want to take a little credit by saying I paused the group and said, before we talk about nutrition, good people, let's discuss or share something a little about the current obtaining circumstances. So this evolution of the Barefoot Guide on mitigating COVID-19 was part of an accidental occurrence that was a response to an imminent and a global concern from COVID-19. And indeed, what came out clearly was that the world seemed to have forgotten that there is a role that nutrition plays in preventing all diseases, including COVID-19. So the other second of the why was that, of course, good nutrition strengthens immunity. We all know, as a great Hippocrates said in 431 BC, that all disease begins and ends in the gut. And now with recent research, we know that up to 80% of the immune system is resident within the gut. So as a physician, with all that kind of background and knowledge, we convinced each other that we needed to write a simple guide that focused on that critical mitigation role of nutrition with a focus of safe, healthy agroecological nutrition. So that's the second reason. The third reason, of course, was that this was going to be nutrition that was going to be nutrition with a difference, in the sense that we were forecasting and promoting African, indigenous, diverse foods as opposed to monocultures, highly processed foods that are oftentimes not good for the balance and the well-being of the gut. So the second reason, of course, why we wrote the book was to promote the rich variety, diversity of African foods, herbs, vegetables, seeds, and so on. That really is, in my view, part of the reason why COVID-19 hasn't ravaged Africa as much as it has ravaged Europe, including, of course, the sun, minerals like zinc, of course, other supplements that include vitamin C, garlic, ginger, and so on. And then, of course, towards the very end, finally, I would like to say that we are in the process of writing a second book that's going to be promoting the mainstreaming of agroecology. But the essence of this book is going to be an upscale of what we covered in the context of the mini guide on COVID-19 and mitigation. I could say more. I speak a lot, but I would like to pause here, John, and say that going forward, the way forward is for preventing, not only mitigating NCDs, COVID-19, but also NCDs, that we need to go back, promote, encourage, market African foods, not just for nutrition, but also as a business enterprise to improve livelihoods, and really mainstream agroecology as a safe, sustainable way to achieve healthy lifestyles, including mitigating COVID-19 and NCDs. So I think, John, I'd like to pause here. I think there'll be time for question and answer, and let my other colleagues say a little more. So with those few remarks, I hope I have done justice in terms of sharing the why of developing this Barefoot guide, addressing the neglected remedy, of course, which is safe, healthy agroecological nutrition. Thank you, John. Over to you.
Great. Thanks, Peter. Thanks very much. Always enjoy listening to you. So, unfortunately, Professor Onyango, Cecilia, is not been able to join us. She was going to talk a little bit about the main messages of the Barefoot Guide. So I'll jump in there. And what I'm going to do, and just to say a little bit more about Barefoot Guides and the aim of them as a kind of publication. The whole aim is to, because nutrition, there's a lot of information out there, but a lot of it is in academic language and it circulates between academics. And what Barefoot Guides try and do is to make all that information accessible, to make it simple, not simplistic, but simple, and to make it straightforward and accessible to anybody and anyone, anywhere. Okay, it has to be in English, but it's being translated into different languages as well. So I'm just going to, the final chapter of the book is the various characters, because there are stories in the book and with different characters, and the final chapter sums it all up with the different characters. So I'm just going to read to you from the book what these characters say. So first of all, it's Mbuya. Traditional diets are the best foundation for what we eat. Our forefathers and mothers spent many hundreds of years learning what food keeps us strong and healthy. Let us revive and celebrate our traditional diets, for they also remind us of who we are and where we came from. And then Ruth says, eat food that is grown on healthy living soil, as this food is full of a variety of nutrients that make you healthy. The mighty microbes in healthy living soil feed the mighty microbes in our bodies. The fresher the food, the better. If you grow your own food, you can eat it as soon as it's picked. Try to avoid food that's been grown with chemicals such as poisonous sprays and fertilizers. These can make you sick over time. Healthy soil equals healthy food, and healthy food equals healthy people. Eat from the rainbow bowl, a variety of foods that have different colors. Avoid processed food that has lots of nutrients from being too refined, has lost nutrients from being too refined, or has additives such as coloring, preservatives, flavoring, extra sugar and salt. These additives weaken your gut microbes and your immune system. Use clean water to wash and prepare all your food. Fresh food is best, so grow it yourself if you can. If you buy your food, try to know the source of it. Don't cook food for too long and avoid using too much salt and too much oil. Avoid sugar. Sweetened products such as sodas have far too much sugar for our bodies, and many processed foods contain a lot of sugar. Processed or added sugar has no nutritional benefit and can cause health problems such as obesity, diabetes, and many other chronic diseases. You can get all your energy from the natural sugars in fruits, vegetables, and grains. And then the final one is summed up by Martha. Eat a wide variety of fresh, local foods produced naturally. Emphasize traditional foods and dishes, as Mbuya says. Then you'll be having the best medicine to fight against a serious infection of COVID-19. So that summarizes the main messages of the mini Barefoot Guide. We'll now go to questions. And Peter, would you like to go ahead and answer the question you said you would answer? It's about the ag-focused organization. Maybe if you could just read so to improve diets, the first step would be to see what nutrition is missing. As an ag-focused organization, we don't have the resources to do full nutritional analysis in population groups. what do you advise for that? So Peter G, you said you would like to answer that.
Yes. Can you hear me, John?
Yep, you're a bit shaky, but we can hear you.
Right. I really appreciate this question because this was the exact concern of all the 4 or 5 NGO partners, all of which were ag-focused organizations, saying, oh, we are not nutritionists. Oh, we can't really get deeply involved in nutrition. That's not our strength. That's not what we do. And this is a challenge. But it's we found a way to deal with that. No, you cannot do a full nutritional analysis, find out exactly what minerals, is it zinc, is it iron, what is it that's missing? No, that is the work of other organizations and the work of research. But that doesn't mean that as an ag-focused organization, that there are simple ways to assess changes in nutritional outcomes. And we found a very simple tool that doesn't require a trained nutritionist to do. And this is the Dietary Diversity Score. All it is a questionnaire of about 12 questions to do a recall of what they ate in the last week and what different types of foods in the different food groups they ate. And there is a high correlation between diversity in diets and improved nutrition. And what we were trying to measure as a proxy indicator of whether nutrition was improving from our ag work, we had dry season gardens and we tried to diversify the crops and we tried to do nutrition education. Was it leading to any sort of change, an improvement in nutrition? Well, we can't do all those sophisticated nutritional analyses that you refer to, but you can do a simple review of what people actually eat. And that is, it's known all through the literature as a very strong proxy indicator of improved nutritional outcomes. So if people are eating more leafy greens, and if people are eating more fat, and if people are eating more legumes than before, or having a more diverse diet each time they have a meal where there's different colors in the food, that's simple to assess over, you need to do in different seasons to see whether or not your ag program is having an impact on nutrition. Now, that's one thing that you can do as an ag group without having to invest in hiring a nutritionist and so on. It's just adding one thing more to your monitoring and evaluation toolbox. The second answer is that no, we can't do everything as ag-focused organizations. We need to work across sectors. So we involved the different health posts and the nutritionists that were there, and both their groups were talking about how to grow different and diverse food, and our ag people, our ag extension workers also would have a nutritional dimension to explain to farmers the different types of foods that they could grow that would improve their diets, and make use of more of the same food that if they grew beans, not sell all the beans, but keep some of it to feed their own kids. If they're growing more dry season garden vegetables, not to sell everything, but have some in their own cooking pot. So those sort of messages with nutrition education are also possible to do, but it's best to work together with whatever nutrition people are in your locality. So we found that worked, and all of our ag-focused organizations are now having a much stronger nutrition dimension to their program and are monitoring change without adding a lot to their work. And that's something we hope to document in the second Barefoot Guide. So I hope, John, I've answered that question. I could go on and on, but that's the main points. John?
Yeah, I'm on mute. Sorry. I did the classic thing of muting. So thank you very much, Peter. I think that was a very comprehensive answer. So there's Another question, what are your thoughts on the double burden of disease? Do you see a challenge in people consuming increasingly more fast food, empty calories? I don't know, Peter M., would you like to answer that one?
Yes, John. Let me just jump in, but firstly to thank and concur with what Peter G., my namesake, has just shared. This is indeed, for me, an absolutely important question, because indeed it is a double burden, in the sense that what we are promoting as safe, diverse, agroecologically grown foods are not only safer in the sense that they do not use synthetic toxic agrochemicals, which of course ravage and destroy not just the soil but also the ecosystem in the human gut, that these foods are diverse, they are local, they are easily grown, they do not require the use of harsh synthetic agrochemicals, oftentimes advocated and marketed by conventional agriculture. So what has happened is that while malnutrition has continued to increase because of children being fed with the wrong food, at the same time, because of the push of these corporate organizations promoting highly processed foods that are not diverse, there has been a growing rate of obesity, overweight globally. In fact, as we speak right now, today, there is more obesity as a form of malnutrition than there is a malnutrition within the children. So the double burden is contextualized in the sense that while there is still malnutrition, traditional old school malnutrition where kids don't get enough protein, there is now that access to certain lines of food, say for example carbohydrates, that are highly processed, that have plenty of added sugar, that are infused with other non-nutrient dense foods that are resulting in obesity, not just in adults, but unfortunately good people, also in our children, which in turn, of course, manifests in the bigger burden of non-communicable diseases that include diabetes, hypertension, cancers, and many other factors that I want to say, as a physician who's trained in epidemiology, that this is indeed a key contributing factor to the higher incidence of COVID-19 deaths in the West, particularly the United States of America. Highly processed foods, it's creating a double burden that was basically a time bomb. When COVID comes, immune system is low, knocks you off. And as you have noticed now, I'm not talking from what you don't know, anecdotal evidence is very clear. The rates of COVID succumbing because of the lower rates of obesity and overweight within the African populations, the rates of succumbing to COVID-19 have massively been much lower. So I would concur and say that yes, indeed, and this is why, for me, as a physician, as a public health physician, this intervention must be shouted from the rooftops: diverse, healthy, leafy, greeny vegetables, plenty of zinc, plenty of vitamin D, sunshine, people moving around, exercising, and avoiding highly processed foods that indeed are the reason why there is an increasing burden, double burden of both malnutrition and overweight. So I could go on and on. I teach, I preach, I breathe, I practice this kind of work. So as you know, John, I'll have to stop here so that other people can ask other questions. Thank you.
John, I'd like to add something, if I may.
You may, certainly, go ahead.
Yeah, the double burden is really an important question, and it is happening increasingly across sub-Saharan Africa. And we're importing this mostly from the Western countries, especially the US. Until recently, I always thought, oh, it's overweight in the cities and it's underweight or stunted in the rural areas, but it's actually worse than that. We have cases, increased cases, and now this is being monitored as well, that children can be both overweight due to eating too many highly processed, carbohydrate-rich foods and stunted at the same time. And this is really alarming. And we need to do something about it. Now, why does it happen? Well, especially in the cities, you get things like polished rice, perfume polished rice from countries like Malaysia or Vietnam. And consumers seem to like it. And it's highly marketed. And they don't even take the rice that's grown locally, which often is processed, but doesn't have that nice aroma or is not highly polished. And we just have to educate citizens who eat about the importance of eating healthy foods, and especially locally produced healthy foods. And this is part of the food system. It's not just people growing and then people eating. We have to link the two. And this is how we can best achieve this working on this double burden that you raise. In my view, we have to do both.
And maybe just to add a little bit more, I think, and linking it to the idea of the Barefoot Guides, it's about making this information uncomplicated and straightforward. And that's the beauty of traditional diets and referring people to their traditional diets, because there's lots of knowledge there. And it makes, once there is quite a lot of awareness raising that has to go on, and kids are definitely all over the continent are going, especially in urban areas, going more for the fast foods and the takeaways, and it has a certain status and so on. So there's a lot of turning around to do, but it often makes sense to people. Let's go back to what people ate traditionally. And we're not going to go back to that, but let's think of that as the basis, because all traditional diets across the continent, in their full sense, sometimes people sort of think of them in a simplified sense. But when you look at a full traditional diet, it's incredible the diversity that you get, the number of dishes that you get, and so on. And so that forms such a good basis. And then from there, one can enrich and add and so on. So I think that's critical. So there's a question,
John,
yes.
John, I just want to attest to what you've said. In my work, when we try to help farmers think about traditional foods, we just ask the older people, what were the different foods that you ate? What were the different plants? And all sorts of crops, which are not researched, they're not part of ag extension, bambara beans, pigeon peas, amaranth, and then a whole host of different green leafy plants that I don't even know the scientific names of, but I have local names. All almost in every village came out, but they're disappearing. So we need to really put more emphasis on the growing of these indigenous leafy greens in particular for anemia, these different neglected crops which exist but which are gradually being lost and not included in the diets anymore. So I just wanted to say that that's part of the approach as an ag-focused organization that we have been doing.
Great. Thanks, Peter. There's one question that's directed specifically at you, but I guess any of us could answer it. It's saying, why do you think micronutrients have reduced so much since the 1950s in soils managed organically? I wasn't aware of that. I'm not sure where that's referring to, whether that's maybe research in the UK or...
It's research in the US. I don't have the exact reference in front of me, but I was surprised that I thought that crops like broccoli or lettuce or other types of organically grown foods in the US, which are grown in industrial scale, would have the full range of nutrients, tomatoes. And in fact, they have been analyzed and they don't have the same level of micronutrients as in the 50s. And that might seem shocking, but if whoever asked this question, you can look it up, I think, on Google and find out. I think the number I've seen out there, different controversies around it, but I think it's clear that it's less. And one reason it's less is because the soils have degraded, and the way we manage soils are degraded. Now, organic farms still till the soil, and if you till the soil, you decrease the level of the mighty microbes that we talk about in our book are decreased. The bacteria, the fungi, and so on are reduced, even if you don't use any chemical. Just the tillage will reduce that. And without those beneficial microbes, even if the soil is grown organically, it doesn't allow the uptake of many nutrients, because it's that interface between the roots and the microbes that strengthen the plant and allow uptake of these micronutrients like magnesium, copper, iron, and so on. And when even organic, I was surprised myself, seemed to be less nutritious than the records show from the 50s. And that's new research from the US that I saw. So that's my answer to that, John.
Great, thanks a lot. And yeah, I think the problem with organic has been that it's about certain practices. It's not necessarily related to whether the soil health has improved. And so you get certification as organic, and you may be continuing to use practices which are depleting the soil. So I think there's just lots of learning going on about how do we really improve the soil. And I think once we do that, then that problem won't come about. I'm just looking again. There are a couple of comments which I think others would. John Fellows, hi John, you're in the audience there. It puts a link, I presume others can see that. Pauline, hi Pauline, has also made a comment there about basically the importance of local seed and the diversity of seed. And that's very true. And encouraging having diverse seed and ensuring that there are strong farmer-managed seed systems is a critical part of having a healthy diet. And I've been amazed in recent work here in Zimbabwe, because remember, Zimbabwe has had probably a stronger push of the Green Revolution than anywhere, just about, and maize has sort of taken over. Maize equals food. It's created huge problems. But nevertheless, if you go out there are particularly women, because women are the main seed keepers, particularly women have been keeping the seeds all this time going. And the diversity is tremendous. And what we have to do is to give status to that diversity, to give recognition to the value of that diversity. And I think COVID-19 is the silver lining of COVID-19 is that we can really use it to emphasize nutrition and the importance of nutrition, the importance of diverse seed, and so on. So thanks for that comment, Pauline. I don't know if there are any other questions at this stage. So what about the micronutrients in spices? Maybe this is one for you, Peter M. I always remember you telling me that having that hot curry was in
yes. Yeah, I'm liking the discussion and the feedback from the audience. Yeah, as is above, as is below, so is above. This is a very fundamental realization that if the soil is healthy, rich with microorganisms, all the requirements of the plants and in turn for the animals and for the human health are adequate. This issue of micronutrients is, with all due respect, a big agric adulteration that has been created because of the monocultures that have eroded the soil of the rich biodiversity of nutrients. Perhaps I would like to step a little behind and explain a thing or two about the mischief behind big agric. Big agric, among the chemicals, the herbicides that they produce, One of them that is notoriously famous is glyphosate, N-phosphonamethylglycine, glycine, also known as Roundup, which is an organophosphate. What is very widely used agrochemical, that is actually, some people call it the devil's molecule, does, it actually chelates. It chelates minerals. It creates key minerals that are required for the integrity of the plants, including minerals like zinc, iron, magnesium, manganese, and others. I would want not to go into details. So what happens is that these nutrients are then removed from access to the root system of the plants. As a result, the plants that are grown, although they appear physically it's the same, they are deficient of key micronutrients. This is where the story begins. Of course, in the process of giving these chemicals to farmers and so on, the agrochemical industry makes money. They sell to you these products to use supposedly to kill the weeds. And some of these weeds is what Peter G., my colleague, says are actually foods. You know, the rich African vegetables that are green leafy, 99% of them are considered by conventional nutrition as weeds. Big shame, big misclassification, something that agroecology needs to correct, because who has the audacity to classify what other people consider as foods as weeds? As a story for another day. But just to focus again back to the issue of micronutrients, this of course then results in a scenario where when food gets to the table, it's not only a monoculture, but even within the monocultures that are available as routine foods that are consumed. Of course, give the example of maize. It's that this maize is not like the original Harlem maize that had all those rich nutrients. As a result, it becomes necessary for micronutrients to be added to foods to supplement, to enable these foods to have enough of the range of nutrients, mineral elements that are required for the food to be adequately nutritious. So really, this is a discussion that we could go on for a longer time, but the point here is that agroecology solves both the need to apply synthetic fertilizers and therefore ensures that rich variety of nutrients or micronutrients, microminerals and so on, are available in the soil and therefore available to plants, and therefore negates the need to add these micronutrients to the foods that are consumed, that oftentimes from a medical point of view or health point of view manifest in different diseases. As a matter of fact, it's now postulated that even COVID-19 is a consequence of a lack of certain key micronutrients, especially zinc. Again, this is not a forum to go into the details, but this is documented scientific evidence published all over, including the British Medical Journal. Those who want references later on, I can share. So clearly, all disease is a state of lack of balance. Disease is a state of not being at ease. So the necessity of micronutrients only arises because of the current food and nutrition system that deliberately destroys the balance of the nutrients that the plants and the animals, of course, including human beings, require, and as a result makes it necessary that at the table, at the human consumption level, these nutrients that are missing, which are micronutrients, are added then at a cost to the foods that are then made available to human consumption, and oftentimes they call this as food fortification. So the agrochemical industry, the food industry makes money by selling to you toxins that poison the soil, kill the rich nutrients and variety in the soil system. At the same time, they sell to you what they call fortified micronutrients to enable you to have what is a semblance of a balanced diet. So I don't know whether I'm coming across clearly, John, but this is the dichotomy. This is the mischief. This is the nefariousness of the current conventional food system. And the big boys up there know this. Of course, not only do they give you food that is deficient, even when they give you fortification, they are aware that those who can't access this then manifest in disease pathology, from diabetes to hypertension to cancer to respiratory complications. And of course now, as you said clearly, COVID has basically exposed the failed food system. Part of what's the reason why right now COVID is ravaging Europe and the US is the weather. Inadequacy of vitamin D. Is anybody talking about this? Unfortunately, no. Vitamin D is available in seafood. It's available in eggs that are grown organic, have been raised organically. It's available in some meats. It's available in, of course, vitamin D is in sunshine. It's vitamin D3. It's free from the sun. So the issue of micronutrients is a discussion we could go on, good people, for a very long time. But at this point in time, within the time constraints that we have, I would just like to pause here and say this is a problem that can easily be solved by practicing growing food agroecological. And again, just quickly mention to what Peter G mentioned about organic soils being found to be a bit nutrient deficient. Again, of course, it depends on how the organic farming is practiced. In my view, I not only call it organic farming, I rather call it agroecological farming, because the elements of agroecology are broader than just organic. Organic for me is just a name, but really the broader aspects is ensuring that the integration, there's rotation, and there's soils. They are different from Ghana to Kenya to Tanzania to Southeast Asia. So there's a need to put into practice certain elements to test the soil and ensure that for some soils where the nutrients are missing, that this can be added using different methods like bokash, which perhaps John can mention briefly. But good people, this is a discussion that very close to many of our hearts, and we think that agroecology can actually solve the triple crisis of climate change, soil regeneration, biodiversity, and for me as a physician, can solve the issue of COVID-19 and everlasting problem of increasing cases of NCDs. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Peter. Our time's coming to an end. We have to stop at 17, at whatever 55, whatever your time is. So there is the opportunity of a Zoom. I have to go to another session that I'm moderating immediately now. It was a last minute thing. I did the two Peters. Are you happy to carry on having a chat with people in a Zoom?
John,
yes?
I just see one other question, and I'd like to answer that before we move to Zoom.
Okay, well, we've only got 2 minutes. They're quite strict on time. We've only got 1 minute, in fact.
Yeah, it's the issue of how can we encourage farmers to grow diverse food that they grow rather than sell it. And a lot of that problem in Southern Africa is because of fertilizer subsidies, which come along with maize, so that people grow more maize because they can get fertilizer. And we need to stop that policy and then change that policy to encourage more diverse growing of local crops rather than on a single crop. And I just wanted to mention that before we lose most of our participants.
Okay, great. Thanks, Peter, for that. So as long as the two Peters are happy to have a chat for another half an hour, the Zoom link, Becca has put the Zoom link in, I think the audience in their room have got a Zoom link, and then we've got the Zoom link there. Do you see that, Peter and Peter?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, are you happy to carry on having a bit of a chat with a few people?
Sure, if there are people, I'll be happy
Yeah.
to.
If people who are available and willing, of course, we are more than glad to have that discussion.
So I can't join you, but thank you very much. We're going to end here now. So thank you both, Peter and Peter. And a pity we couldn't have Cecilia, so apologies on Cecilia's behalf. I'm sure she will have tried, but there will have been a connection problem of some sort.
Yeah. I think she had a problem with connection. She tried to reach me in Kampala and she wasn't able to.
Okay. So thank you very much to the audience for listening. Thank you for your comments. There's a nice one there from Victor Hugo. There are no weeds and no worthless men. There are only bad farmers. So on that note, and we will leave you now and say goodbye and end this session. I have to dash off to another one. So goodbye, everybody. Can't see you, but cheerio.
Bye-bye, John. Thank you. And encourage the audience to download a book and read it.
Yes, I did urge that at the beginning.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, the audience. And of course, you're ready to come back to Zoom and discuss further for those who are